Nuno, would you like to ask your question?
Yes, hello Michael.
Hello.
Hello everyone. Thanks for your explanation. I feel in a lot of parts a bit of a mind knot, but but it was very nice. Thank you very much for that. But the one that I got stuck with is the word jiva. So when not only on your texts, but it's quite often or mostly translated as soul as such.
Yes.
But if you bring that in the context of Christianism, as it's not that I know much about it, but it's some sort of identity regardless of the body, as I understand it.
Yes.
In context of Ramana Maharshi teachings, it's more that which is transported also between dreams. Is it so? In the sense, it's jiva is the same as ego,
Yes.
or
Yes. That is in older texts. The word jiva was used a lot. Bhagavan didn't actually use the term jiva very frequently. He referred more frequently to ego or mind or the thought called I, but they are all one and the same. They're all terms referring to the same thing.
Yeah, because you even have this kind of yoga which is called Jiva Mukti. I guess it's the release of ignorance somehow.
Jivan also means life. So Jivan Mukti means liberation in life. That is the idea of Jiva Mukti is that while still living in the body, you're liberated. That is a useful idea in some contexts. For example, to explain someone like Bhagavan, a jnani like Bhagavan, in our view, Bhagavan is still, well, not now, but after the ego that identified itself as I am Venkataraman, after that ego was killed, the body of Bhagavan continued to live for another 54 years. A person in our view, Bhagavan seems to be a person, but we know that he's actually in that state of jnana. But according to Bhagavan, the jnani is bodiless and mindless. The jnani has no body or mind. The jnani, as he often used to say, jnana me jnani. That means jnana alone is the jnani. Jnana means pure awareness. So the jnani is nothing but pure awareness. But because we mistake ourselves to be a person, we mistake him to be a person. So he seems, in our view, to be a person. That is called Jivan Mukti. But people then imagine, yes, in this lifetime, I will get to liberation, and then I'll continue living for some years afterwards. I will be a Jiva Mukta. The Jiva Mukta does not, the Jiva Mukta is aware of itself as just I am. It is not aware of itself as I am a person who is now a Jiva Mukta. Previously, I was in bondage, now I am in Jiva Mukti. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah, okay.
That is, as Bhagavan says, liberation is nothing but the annihilation of ego. He says in the final verse of Uḷḷadu Nāṛpadu. So when ego is annihilated, what is ego? Ego is that false awareness. I am this person. I am this body. So when ego is annihilated, we're no longer aware of ourselves as a person. We're aware of ourselves just as I am. So how can I am be in any way limited to or even connected with this body? This body is a mere appearance.
It's like there was never a jiva.
There was never a jiva. Exactly.
It was just ignorance of itself somehow.
Exactly.
Okay. Thanks. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
And I'm sorry if anything I said earlier was confusing. That is, I was going into what Bhagavan said there in quite a lot of depth, and I was linking it to other parts of his teaching, because this is how we have to think about his teachings in order to get a comprehensive understanding. I wasn't trying to complicate it.
Don't take it wrong. I'm very grateful to it, because it's input for my own Atma-vichara exercise, where sometimes I feel in some dead end. So all these things are quite required. So I'm very thankful for your understanding and blessing. So thank you. Don't take it wrong.
The thing is, I like to go into it very deeply, but I
appreciate it.
For some people, it may be. I mean, I'm possibly not very good at, if I'm talking in a dialogue, then I can adjust what I'm saying. But otherwise, if I'm just talking, I like to go very deep into things, which may not be helpful for all people. I don't know.
Yeah. Thank you for your time.
Okay, right, you're welcome. And then David or Lorraine.
Unmute. Hello, Michael.
Yeah, hello.
Thank you for being with us.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about attachment because, of course, it's very hard for us to go deeper and deeper. And you were talking about ego and attachment to things like I want a new car, or I want to be a professor, or, you know, things that are sort of material in the outer world. But we also have attachment, don't we, to emotions like fear and anger and stuff like that. And I don't know, is there some sort of going deeper and deeper in the five sheaths, or is there some sort of teaching around that? And also we come into this world with physical prowesses of different types. So we can be dexterous or very beautiful, or our bodies have some sort of energy that we bring with us, and we get attached to that as well. And also you were talking last week about destiny and how that's attached to ego. So how do we work with this, with self-inquiry?
Okay. The root of all attachments is the fundamental attachment. I am this body. I am this person. That is, if I am Michael, then I have a certain identity. I belong to a certain country. I may believe in a certain philosophy, or I may believe in a certain religion, and then I identify myself. I have such and such a role in life. I may be a son or a daughter or a husband or a wife or a mother or a father, or all these things. Everything else attaches it. Well, nothing attaches itself to us. We attach ourselves to things, but the basic attachment is we first attach ourselves to this body, and then we attach to so many other things. This is my wife, this is my husband, this is my daughter, this is my son, this is my parents. We are attached to so many things. But the root of all these attachments is this attachment to ourselves as this person. So yes, there are many, many different types. The attachment takes so many different forms, but the root attachment is what is called the dehabhimana, the attachment, the identification of ourself as a body. We attach ourselves to a body. We take this body to be I. And from that, all other attachments arise. Attachments to, you talk about attachment to emotions and so on. Yes, we not only to emotions, even at a deeper level, we attach we identify ourselves with certain likes and dislikes. I like this, I don't like that. This is also a type of, it's an identification. All these are subtle forms of attachment. So attachment is, if in terms, you referred to the five sheaths. In terms of the five sheaths, attachments are in the will, the most basic sheath, the Anandamaya kosha. That is all our likes, dislikes, desires, attachments, hopes, fears, everything. These are all qualities of your will. The will in its subtlest form consists of what are called vasanas. Vasanas are inclinations. So we have certain inclinations. From those inclinations arise our likes and dislikes. And we desire the things we like, and we fear the things we dislike. And so it's all I mean, even within the will, very subtle, that the will in its subtlest form is the vasanas. They're the seeds. They sprout as the likes and dislikes, which again manifest as desires and attachments and all these things. So yeah, very many different levels, but it all comes down, what we are concerned about is not analyzing all these different levels. As Bhagavan said, if you've got in a barber shop, at the end of the day in the barber shop, there'll be so much hair on the floor. You don't, what you have to do with that rubbish, you have to sweep it up and throw it out. You don't begin analyzing how many long hair, how many short hair, how many black hair, how many gray hair, how many red hair, how many blonde hair. We don't, there's no need, because it's all to be rejected. So we need to have a general understanding of how these things work, but we need not go into it too much. What we need to understand, the most important thing to understand, is that the root of all these things is this fundamental attachment, I am this body. If we deal with that fundamental attachment, all other attachments will be removed. Is that an adequate answer, or do you want to ask more on that?
There's no sort of way of getting deeper. There's no. So I've been sitting in self-inquiry, and I'm thinking, right, I have this propensity to be angry and fly at people, and so I'd be thinking, well, where does this come from? Where does this come from? And sort of thinking, well, when I was a child, what happened to me? What happened to me? What happened to me as a baby? That's not the way to do it, is it? No. How do you do it?
To whom is this? To whom? That question Bhagavan gave us, to whom, is a very useful question.
Well, to me, I know that.
Yeah, that's all you need to know. Then hold on to that me. Without that me, there wouldn't be any of these things. So that me is the root of the problem.
So how does that shift from the me and then getting beyond the me?
Automatically. If you hold on to the me, it will take you beyond me, because the nature of ego rises, stands, and flourishes, clinging to other things. That is, so long as we allow our attention to go away from ourselves towards anything else, we are feeding and nourishing ego. When we turn our attention back towards ourselves, ego then has nothing. When ego tries to hold itself, it will automatically subside. It can stand only by holding on to other things. If it tries to hold on to itself, it automatically subsides. This is the nature of ego. So all you need to do, you don't have to worry about the rope. All you need to do is look very carefully at the snake. That snake will take you to the rope. Because if you look at it carefully enough, you'll see, oh, it's not a snake, it's just a rope. So holding on to that me is all you need to do. That will take you to your goal. Bhagavan sometimes compared it to the scent of a dog following a scent. If a dog wants to find its master, it's found the scent. All it has to do is hold on to that scent and follow it. It will certainly reach its master. Likewise, all we have to do is hold on to that me, and we will certainly be led back to our source. Because the more we hold on to that me, the more me subsides, and then what we actually are is what remains.
That's interesting.
Because in truth, because in language, language can sometimes, unless we understand that this cannot be captured perfectly in words. So words are pointers. So we have to be ready to see beyond the word. We sometimes talk as if there were two eyes, an ego and our real nature. But obviously there aren't two eyes. There's only one eye. The same one eye, when it's mixed with adjuncts, as I am Lorraine, that is ego. The same I without Lorraine as just I am, that is what you actually are. So there's only one I. Hold on to that one I, it will take you back to what you actually are. Hold on to the false I, and it will take you to the real I. Because just like the snake is nothing other than the rope, the false I is nothing other than the real I. The real I isn't the false I, but the false I is nothing but the real I.
So me is both the snake and the rope.
What you call me is the snake, but that snake is nothing but the rope. So look at yourself carefully and you will see what you actually are.
And that could take forever.
No, it won't take. It all depends on how much love we have for this. The more love we have for it, the more we will be attending to ourselves, and the more we'll be willing to let go of other things.
Mm.
If you're madly in love with someone, you don't mind about anything else. You only want to be with that person. You're ready to give up everything else to be with that person. We must be madly in love with knowing and being what we actually are. Then nothing else will matter.
Yes, I
It's
would.
all a matter of love.
But the thing is, when you go into a deeper state, you have to wake up and you think, oh no, I've got to come back to this.
That is not waking up. That's going back to sleep again.
Yes, all right. I see what you mean.
You have got to wake up, but wake up in the proper way.
Yes.
Not wake up from one dream into another dream. Wake up into the real waking.
Yeah. Okay, I'll work on it. Thank you very much, Michael.
We have no choice. We have to work on it because no one can do it for us. We each have to do it for ourselves.
Yes. And even destiny is the snake.
Destiny has been allotted by Bhagavan to help us. That is, whatever the external circumstances, they are all intended to help us to turn within and let go of the thing. So we can derive benefit from destiny the more indifferent we are to it. The more we don't bother about what happens, that is the aim of destiny, to make us understand that what is going to happen is going to happen. There's nothing we can do to change it. So let's not bother about it. What we can change, our outward going mind, we can change into an inward going mind. That's all that is required.
That's all we can do.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
As someone just wrote in one of the comments, be in love with love.
Yes.
Love is what we actually are.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Stuart, I think you're next.
Michael, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hi, Michael. Good afternoon. Hi. I wanted just to mention, due to my quote-unquote destiny, aversion plays a huge role in thinking that getting away from something will make me happy.
Mm.
And you were talking about desire is the false illusion of gaining something will make one happy. And I just wanted to get your impression of the idea that aversion and getting away from something is also a false dream of happiness.
Yes, exactly. That is, we think, it seems to us that both happiness and unhappiness are caused by external things. But actually, what is the cause of the happiness or unhappiness that seems to be caused by external things? If I like something and I get the thing I like, my desire for that thing will be satisfied.
Right.
So the agitation of my mind caused by that desire will be temporarily, partially pacified, and so I experience happiness. If I get something that I dislike, then that dislike will, oh no, I don't want this. That will agitate the mind. And that'll cover up the happiness. So I feel, oh, I'm unhappy because this thing has happened. I didn't want this to happen. Now it's happened. That's made me unhappy. So we think both our happiness and unhappiness is dependent on external things. Why certain things seem to make us happy and other things seem to make us unhappy is because of our likes and dislikes. And so we have to go back to a deeper level. Right? It's all problems are caused by our likes and dislikes. But we have to go even deeper than that. To whom are these likes and dislikes? Who likes this? Who dislikes that? That is what we need to investigate. This I who has all these likes and dislikes.
Right, exactly. Sorry for interrupting. So the important point is to follow the scent of the me or the I, which is
Exactly.
falsely appearing mixture of the self and a mental impression, and we hold on to that to get back to dissolve, and eventually the adjuncts dissolve, or our attachment to the adjuncts dissolve.
Exactly, exactly. But when holding on to that, we need to understand clearly that is, as Bhagavan said, ego is a mixed awareness. It's a conflation of I am with a body. But when we are investigating ourselves, it's not the body portion we're investigating, it's the I am portion. So whether you say when it's said, as Bhagavan said, somewhere in Maharshi's Gospel, Bhagavan says, in your investigation into the source of the Ahamvriti means the I thought, the thought called I, you're investigating the essential chit aspect of ego. It's not the Jada aspect, it's the chit aspect. That is the I am portion.
Right. I just was referring to your previous statement today where you said, maybe you said it for one reason there and a different reason now, but you said that attend to the snake and eventually the snake will disappear because
Yes.
That's what I was referring to.
Exactly. Yes. It is. But
I think your level of practice is once you realize the snake is a mental impression, then you're go ahead based on that.
I mean, it can be explained in different ways, but I just wanted to make that clear. Though ego is a mixed awareness, when we're attending to ego, it's the essential I am portion. That is, of course, there's still the mixture. But we're trying to, the portion of ego that we're trying to focus on is the I am portion, the chit portion. The more we focus on that, the more the Jada portion, the adjuncts, will drop off. So
right. Go ahead.
It's all only one thing. As you say, the snake and the rope are one thing. But the more we, so long as we're seeing from a distance, it looks like a snake. The closer we go, the more carefully we look at it, the more we are able to doubt that it is, okay, it looks like a snake, but is it actually a snake? Maybe it could be just a rope. As we get closer, we become more confident that the snake is an illusion. So in other words, the snake portion is dropping off. We still see it as a snake, but we're not so afraid of it because we're not so strongly convinced that it's a snake. We're able to question. Yes, it looks like a snake, but is it really a snake? And when we actually see it, it's just a rope. Then it just takes a moment to actually see it as a rope, and all fear goes.
Right. So then when we're in this partial mixed awareness of, is it a snake? Or I don't know if that's the right word.
But trouble is, sometimes when we explain it too much, we actually create more confusion. It's very, very simple. There is one eye, attend to that one eye. That is the simplest way of putting it. But sometimes for clarification, when people ask, but this I is ego, so how can this lead me to my goal? Yes, I is ego, but because we're attending to the essential chit aspect of ego, the essential I am portion of ego, the more we attend to that, the more ego as such will subside. In other words, the adjuncts will drop off, and finally we'll reach our goal. The snake rope analogy is a useful analogy, but there are different ways of explaining the same thing. But it's not always possible to to map one explanation to another explanation. So we need to be flexible in our understanding, because ultimately it is beyond words, it's beyond thoughts. As I say, all Bhagavan's words are just pointers. We have to recognize what he's pointing at, then it will all be clear.
Okay, thank you.
He explained it in different ways because that helps us in different situations. But we shouldn't allow the diversity of explanation. Every explanation is intended to clarify. But if we try and make a mixture of them all, sometimes we can lead to confusion. So let us take each explanation. See what Bhagavan is pointing at, try to follow that, or try to follow this way. But it's all pointing at the same point, which is I.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Right. And then Michael D.
Hi, Michael.
Hi.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just contemplating yesterday, actually, along the lines of what you were speaking, and I was thinking, like, when I'm captivated by thoughts, as the, centered as a thinker, then I'm not separate from the dream, am I? I am the dream. Is that right?
So long as we're dreaming, that is, well, while we are dreaming, we experience ourselves as a person in that dream. But that person in the dream is not the dreamer. The dreamer is ego. But as soon as ego begins to dream, it takes itself to be a person within its dream. And because it limits itself as a person, everything else it sees seems to be other than itself. In a dream, we see a world, we see people, we see houses, we see cars, we see mountains, we see oceans, we see so many things in the dream. All those things seem to be other than ourselves because we have limited ourselves as one little body in that vast dream world. But when we wake up, then we recognize, oh, that was all only my own mind. It was nothing but myself I was seeing as all those things.
So the person, I don't know if I wasn't clear about that. The person
is a body in the dream.
Isn't it? It's not separate from the dream, is it? It is the dream, isn't it?
The person is a part of the dream.
Yeah.
The dreamer is that which has projected and is perceiving the dream. But the dreamer mistakes itself to be a person in its dream.
Yeah.
The dreamer is the creator of the dream. But it mistakes itself to be a creature within the dream.
Yeah. It was good the way you explained it at the end with when Bhagavan says the ego is everything, isn't it?
Yes.
I understood it now the way you put it. It was
nothing exists independent of ego. Just like the dream, there's nothing in the dream that is. The dreamer is seeing itself as that dream world.
Yeah.
We as ego are seeing ourselves as all this world.
Yeah.
That's why Bhagavan says everything is only ego. Or ego is everything.
Towards the end of your talk, you mentioned subject and object. I got a little bit confused because I think I know what you meant. Like, as ego, we believe ourselves, the subject is the ego, isn't it?
Yeah, yes.
But like, rooted as awareness, you see the ego. From there, it is seeing that the ego is an object. Is that correct? No.
We never experience ego as an object, because ego is that which sees all other things. The pure awareness, the real awareness, is neither subject nor object. It is just because the pure awareness, what we actually are, is pure awareness, which is awareness that is not aware of anything other than itself. The awareness that is aware of other things is ego. So ego is always the subject. It can never be an object. But though it is not an object, it always mistakes itself to be an object. That is, this body and mind are objects. Ego experiences them as I, but it is not them. It is the subject.
So the ego is the subject, but the self is not a subject.
It's neither subject nor object. It is the reality that lies behind the subject. It is what the subject actually is.
So the subject is the ego.
Subject is ego, yes.
It's an arising then.
It's
not
an
real.
arising.
Okay. So it's not real.
Not
No.
real, no, no. Thank God.
That's blowing my mind now. Sorry.
If it was real, we'd be in a real pickle.
Okay. I need to digest that. Yeah, and like,
What
you know,
is real? The I am portion of ego. That is, ego is the mixed awareness, I am this body. In that mixed awareness, the I am portion, that is what is real. Everything else is unreal.
yeah, I think it was Bhagavan. He says that self-inquiry is the only practice that doesn't require a doer. All other practices require
Well, no,
practice that doer.
I think it'd be more, that's true in a sense, but I think it'd be more, it would clarify things more if we said every other practice is a doing. This is the practice that is the cessation of doing. That is, why this is the case. That is, any other practice, we are attending to something other than ourselves. Attention to anything other than ourselves is a movement of our mind away from ourselves towards some other thing. That is, our attention is going away from ourselves towards some other thing. In self-investigation, we are turning our attention back to itself. So self-investigation leads to the subsidence of ego. With the ego is the doer. With the subsidence of the doer, all doing also subsides. So self-investigation is not a doing, it's a state of being. The more keenly we attend to ourselves, the more ego subsides, and the more we just remain as we actually are.
Yeah. You have noticed that. It's just, the thing is, you know, like the mind wants something complex, a method, and this is not a method, is it? It's just, it just cuts through to the truth directly, doesn't it?
What is the method for seeing the sun? Look at it.
Yeah.
Looking at something is too simple to be called a method. This is so simple. To refer to it as a method or a technique is gives some sort of complexity to what is actually extremely simple. You want to know who you are, you want to see what you actually are, look at yourself. That's all Bhagavan is saying.
Simple, yet the most powerful, I think.
Most powerful, also the deepest and the most subtle.
Yeah, subtle. Yeah, you got it there. Because, like, as soon as I look at to whom that thought is arising and stuff like that, it's just, it just drops away, that ego.
Exactly.
And you're
that's the whole point.
Only that awareness is left, isn't it?
Yes, that's the whole point.
It's like you said, automatically.
That is this clue Bhagavan has given us. It's such a valuable clue, and he's explained it so clearly. The nature of ego is to rise, stand, and flourish by attending to things other than itself, but to subside and dissolve back into its source by attending to itself. So simple. It's such a simple principle, but if we put it to the test, it's so clearly true.
Yeah, it's so beautiful and so elegant.
Yes.
So direct.
Yes.
Yeah. Never discovered anything like this before. We came across Bhagavan's teaching. Yeah. Thanks for that.
There cannot be anything simpler, because anything else involves two. When we attend to something else, we've got a subject and an object. But in this, when the subject attends to itself, there's no object, there's only the subject. And because the subject is attending to itself, it subsides and it thereby ceases to be even the subject.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I see. I was going to cut you out then because you said subject. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, the subject actually drops away. Okay. It all makes sense. Yeah. Okay. Thanks for that, Michael.
Okay.
Really good.
Thank you.
So,
Thank
we
you
can have Michael. There's a question here which is written down, which is: the world is a dream, and I believe in Bhagavan's words, no doubt. but it is still challenging day to day to take it as a dream. Is there any advice that Bhagavan has given his devotees when such a question was raised?
To understand it, we have to understand what is the nature of a dream. That is, in a dream, we always experience ourselves as a body in the dream. What in a dream, what is real is only ourselves. Everything else is a fabrication. But because we experience ourselves as a body, because we are real, and the body seems to be ourselves, the body seems to be real. The body in the dream is part of the dream world. So the whole dream world seems to be real, so long as we are dreaming. When we wake up, we cease to experience that dream body as I. Our identification switches from that dream body to this dream body, to the present dream body. So as soon as we wake up from a dream, we're able to recognize, oh, it was just a dream. And as soon as we see it was just a dream, it no longer seems real to us. People nowadays, there's a term that people often use, lucid dreaming. But it's a very vague idea. If you try and pin people down, what actually is a lucid dream? There's no clear dividing line between a lucid dream and a non-lucid dream. It's a very vague idea, though people try to do a lot of research in it, psychologists and people. But one of the ways they explain lucid dream, they say in a lucid dream, you know you are dreaming. But what does it mean to know you are dreaming? While dreaming, you may think, I am dreaming. It's just another idea in your dream. But the dream still seems very real, so long as you're dreaming, because you experience a dream body as I, and therefore the dream world seems to be real. You may think, oh, this is just a dream. Even now, we can be thinking this is just a dream. But though we're thinking it's a dream, it still seems very real. Whatever we experience will inevitably seem real, because we who experience it experience ourselves as a body. So therefore the body seems real, therefore everything else seems real. Because the body is a part of the dream world, the whole dream world seems to be real. So in order to remove this delusion that this dream is real, we need to go to the root of it. The root is, I am this body. So long as we're aware of ourselves as I am this body, the body seems to be real, therefore the whole world seems to be real. So we have to go back to investigating the root of it. We can never experience the world as a dream. That is, so long as we are experiencing it, a dream, we are experiencing ourselves as a person within that dream. So the dream always seems to be real. So, but understanding it is a dream is it helps us to achieve a certain degree of detachment. If we look upon our whole life as just a dream, we'll be less concerned about it. We'll be less concerned about, naturally, because we take ourselves to be a body, we are concerned about the welfare of this body. And the intensity of our concern about this body will diminish to the extent to which we are firmly convinced that this is just a dream. And we will, how to become more firmly convinced? It's not that we see it as a dream, but we will recognize its dreamlike quality the more we go deep in the practice. That is, almost any question you may ask, the Bhagavan's solution for everything is, to whom is this problem? Bhagavan isn't there by evading answering the question. He is pointing to the solution to the question. Because whatever question we may ask, the resolution of all questions is to know ourselves. Because without knowing ourselves, we cannot know the truth of anything else. If we turn our attention, rather than worrying about this or that, asking this question or that question, to whom is this question? To whom are all these doubts? To whom are all these problems? Turning our attention more and more back to ourselves brings about the subsidence of ego. To the extent that ego subsides, to that extent will we cultivate an Udassina bhava, what is called an attitude of indifference. We will, yes, okay, this all seems real, but anyway, even if this is all real, it's going to pass off in a few years anyway. I mean, whether the world continues after this body is dead or not doesn't matter to us. Once this body is dead, we're out of it. So we become more and more, we're able to look on the whole thing with a greater and greater degree of detachment. This is the fruit of practicing what Bhagavan taught us. So ultimately, that is, understanding Bhagavan's words is an aid to the practice, but we can get the real benefit only if we actually put it into practice. Merely dwelling on the words, dwelling on what Bhagavan has taught us, trying to understand the idea, that's good. It's good. It can help us in our practice, but it cannot be a solution. However well we understand Bhagavan's teaching, if we don't put it into practice, we will get very, very little benefit from it. But the more we put it into practice, the more will be the clarity and the conviction. Karthik.
Hi, Michael.
Hi.
Yeah, I have a question regarding how much we can be involved with worldly activities in the dream. So, to quote one of the advice from Bhagavan is that he said in one of the conversations, we should keep our involvement or stay away from worldly affairs as much as possible or to the extent it is possible. And also another occasion where there is another Krishna Paramahamsa also said the similar tone of advice where he said a wise man will keep his worldly engagement to the minimal possible level and then dedicates his most of the time in searching for the truth. So both of these statements indicates that we actually have a will or power to decide to what extent we can involve in the worldly affairs. Is that true?
Right. We need to understand what Bhagavan said very carefully. That is, what Bhagavan says is, you're referring to the 19th paragraph, the second last paragraph of Nāṉ Ār. What Bhagavan says there is, Prapanja Vishayangalil Adikamai Manate Vidakudadu. That is, it is not appropriate to let one's mind dwell excessively on worldly matters. And then he says, Sadhyamana Varayal Anya Karyatil Praveska Kudadu. To the extent possible, it is not appropriate to intrude in others' affairs. What he's talking about, well, particularly the first of these two sentences, he's talking about the mind. That is, the actions that this body, speech, and mind are destined to do, they will be made to do. So if you're destined to work in the world, if you're destined to marry and have a family and have a job with responsibilities and all these things, if that is your destiny, you cannot avoid that. But what you can avoid is letting your mind dwell excessively on all these things. Because it's your destiny I mean, I'm just saying, supposing it's your destiny to be married and to have a family and to have a job with so many responsibilities and everything, if it's your destiny to do all these things, you will be made to do it. You need not allow your mind to dwell on these things. Whatever may be the outward course of our life, that is in another place, Bhagavan says in Maharshi's Gospel, when someone is asking Bhagavan about wanting to renounce his work, Bhagavan said, make no effort either to renounce or to work. If you are destined to work, you cannot avoid it. If you're not destined to work, even if you search for it, you cannot get work. But Bhagavan said your effort itself is the bondage. The effort he's talking about there is the effort either to do or not to do. Let it all happen according to destiny. If we are following the advice that Bhagavan gives here of not allowing our mind to dwell excessively on worldly matters, let this life, outward life, go on. We can be a perfectly good grahasta. We can fulfill whatever work we are destined to do without actually allowing our mind to dwell on it. Because, as Bhagavan said in the first paragraph, first sentence of the note he wrote for his mother, according to the destiny of each person, avarava prarabdha prakaram, adakanavan angangirindu atvipan. He who is for that, meaning God or Guru, will angangirindu, being in each place, that means being in the heart of each person, will make them act. So whatever we have to do according to destiny, we will be made to do. So our principal aim should be trying to turn our mind within. The more we turn our mind within and detach itself from the world and all concerns about the world, the more the outward life will go on according to destiny, and we will not be interfering. Even if we allow our mind to dwell excessively on worldly matters, even if we think, I have a family, I have to do this, I have to do that, this is my responsibility, even if we attach ourselves to all these activities, it's still things going to happen exactly as it would happen either way. That is our involving ourselves with all these things at the mental level, that is allowing our attention to go outwards, is not making any difference to what happens. What is going to happen is going to happen. The problem is, the more we allow our mind to go outwards, the more we have likes and dislikes, and I want to avoid this, I want to achieve this, and we are doing not. Though Bhagavan says whatever actions are necessary according to destiny will be made to do, that doesn't mean all the actions we do by body, speech, and mind are necessary. That is, many of them we are doing, but allowing our will to, our vasanas to drive us to do this and to do that. But whatever we may do, we cannot change what is destined to happen. So we can happily let the outward life take care of itself. We need not allow our mind to dwell on worldly matters. We can keep our attention permanently fixed on ourselves. And the world life, outward life will go on as it's meant to go on according to destiny. Does that adequately answer your question?
Yes, Michael. I think it did. But I have one follow-up question.
Yeah.
Your answer kind of indicates that, for example, the mind dwelling in the worldly affairs, or what's happening. So we do have a freedom to actually restrain from it. And so it is to say we have a freedom of thought rather than freedom of a will of action.
Well, no, it's at the level of the will, because that is what drives our mind out towards other things is our Vishaya vasanas. These are the seeds that is our will at the seed form. So it's at that very subtle level, we have that inclination to attend to things other than ourselves. So our mind has a tendency to go outwards because we're inclined to experience this or that. It's at that level that we need to deal with it.
Okay,
if we
Michael.
allow our mind to go outwards, then our vasanas will be dragging us here and there and everywhere. Don't allow the mind outwards. Keep the mind in the heart.
That is very true. But I find it very hard to, sometimes I feel like maybe I should take more responsibilities and be helpful to the world. That, but yeah.
If you are to be helpful to the world, you cannot avoid being helpful to the world. If you are not to be helpful to the world, however much you want to be helpful to the world, you cannot be. Let the world take care of itself. Let your actions take care of themselves. That is the actions according to destiny. That's going to happen anyway, whether you want it or not.
Okay, thank you, Michael.
So that is what Bhagavan has taught us about destiny. It's a very, very great aid to us, but we don't have to bother at all about this external life. We don't have, external means anything other than ourselves. We don't have to bother about. We need to cling only to ourselves, because what is going to happen outwardly is going to happen. So let everything go on according to the destiny. Our aim is to surrender ourselves. How do we surrender ourselves? By turning within.
Okay, I will try my best. Thank you. Yeah.
Well, that's all we can do is try our best. That's all Bhagavan asks of us. So long as we're trying, we're going in the right direction. Everything else he will take care of. Srini, what? I think you're next, Srini.
Hi, Michael. Thank
Hi.
you for all the wonderful teaching today. I was able to get some time and listen to whole conversations. So it's such a blessing to listen to your translation or your version toward the 5th paragraph of Nāṉ Ār, and it cleared a lot of questions. Especially, a lot of us will be thinking more into the body and mind perspective, but it gives more deeper perspective in terms of Bhagavan's way of turning within. Thank you for all the great work that you are doing. I cannot say enough about your work. Thank you. The question I have is,
it's all Bhagavan's work.
It's through you. Yeah, I can say, yeah. So my question is, if outward world is like a Maya, why everyone seems to be running towards external world rather than turning inward to the self? Why there is such a strong external force pulling us away from the self? It seems Maya is dominating whole world, like asuras, something like a demons. So is there something that can you throw some light on? Like, I know this is a Vishayavasanas. I know this is something that ego creating this. Me talking from ego is feeling this way. But if you see anything external from lot of people perspective, accepting that sadhus are great religious persons, this seems to be like a very dominant force of Maya, like going around the world. I wish Ramana comes back in a human form and just gives one more bliss or grace to eradicate this unnecessary Maya, or just give us the grace what we needed. Can you just throw some light on why this is a strong Maya?
Okay.
Thank you.
What is Maya? Is Maya something other than you? You yourself are Maya. That is, ego is Maya.
Correct.
We cannot, that is the whole, Bhagavan is trying to make us understand that the cause of all our problems lies within ourselves as ego. So let's not take the Maya is out there and deluding us and creating all these problems for us. We ourselves are the Maya. That is, Bhagavan said, Maya is nothing but ego. When ego comes into existence, all these other things come into existence. These are all manifestations of ego. So the problem we're dealing with, it is called Maya. What Bhagavan has explained Maya, the word Maya, in a very nice way. He says Maya is Ya-ma. Ya is a feminine form in Sanskrit. Ya is a feminine form of what? And Ma means not. So what is not? What doesn't exist, that is Maya. That is, and what is that Maya? It is nothing but ego. But though ego doesn't actually exist, so long as it looks away from itself, it seems to exist. It means because this ego is only ourself. That is what we now experience as ourself is ego. So long as we look away from ourselves, we seem to be ego, and therefore there's Maya. If we look back at ourselves, then we will find that this ego doesn't actually exist. So there never was any Maya. Never was any world, never was any problem. What actually exists always exists as it is. And about Bhagavan coming again, why should we trouble Bhagavan? He took all that trouble of coming once and giving us these teachings, and we instead of following why did he come? To tell us to look within. Instead of looking within, we look outside. Bhagavan, when are you going to come again? We should be we are the purpose of Guru in name and form. Bhagavan need not come again because he's ever present. When Bhagavan when his body was nearing death and people were weeping and saying, "Oh, you're going," Bhagavan said, "Where can I go? I am here."
Yeah.
What does he mean by "I am here"? We can interpret in various ways. Oh, Bhagavan is always present in Tiruvannamalai. But that is true in a certain sense. Bhagavan is always there in physical form as Aranachala. He's always there present in his Sanadi in Ramanashram. But in a deeper sense, what he means by "I am always here," he is the I am in the heart of each one of us. So how can he ever leave us? How can he ever go away? Since he hasn't left us, how can he come back again?
Yeah, I'm
problem
telling.
Is, we want Bhagavan outside because we like looking outside. Bhagavan doesn't like us looking outside. He wants us to look within. So for a brief period, he appeared in name and form, and then he quickly withdrew that name and form. And he said, but before, he made it clear, but if we want to find him, we have to look within our own heart.
Yeah.
There are so many people who go around looking for the jnani. I want a jnani because Bhagavan has said satsang is very good. So where can I find a jnani so I can have satsang? Bhagavan said, you yourself are the jnani. The Guru is within you. The jnani is within you. Find the jnani within you. Don't look outside. So long as we're looking outside for any sort of help, we haven't understood what Bhagavan is saying. If at all we want external help, it's there in the form of Bhagavan's teachings. And what are Bhagavan's teachings constantly reminding us? Turn within, turn within, turn within.
Yeah. Yeah. I mentioned this calling back Bhagavan. It is mainly to not to bring back Bhagavan because it's already there within our hearts. It seems a lot of nonsense outside. The ego is very dominant. It is kinds of like the mind seems to be so full of ego, or this world seems to be full of Maya. So that's the context I was telling. So I know we have Bhagavan in all the hearts. It's just like we don't realize it. When we realize it, we don't need in a physical form. It's already there in our heart. Yeah.
Why is the mind full? Why is the world full of Maya? If you're looking through green glasses, you'll see everything green. We are looking through the eyes of Maya. In other words, we're looking through ego, so the whole world seems to be full of Maya. But the Maya we see outside is the Maya within ourselves. So how to root out that Maya within ourselves? By turning within to see what we actually are. When we see what we actually are, we will see there was never any Maya. There's only what we actually are.
Yeah, one last thing. I was just reading Ramana Maharshi's biography, Pictorial Way. I just refer every time when I see something needed. He says you can never find the mind through the mind. Pass beyond it in order to find what is non-existent. That seems so true in this context, because I'm trying to, or most of us are trying to find this truth of I through the mind. But this is beyond the mind. We have to go past the mind and just be that self.
Yes. Sometimes it's difficult from these recordings, particularly when things were recorded in English, to know actually what Bhagavan said and what he meant. But from his original writings, what he made clear is the nature of the mind or ego is to look outwards. So long as we're looking outwards, we cannot find the truth. If we look within, what now seems to be mind or ego will subside and merge back into its source. And then what is real alone will remain. As he says in verse 21 of Uḻḷadu Nāṛpadu, Unadal Khan, being food is seeing. So the mind, so long as we remain as mind or ego, we cannot know what we actually are. Only when this mind or ego is swallowed by the light of pure awareness, the state of being that then remains, that is the state of knowing ourselves.
Yeah. So we need mind, but we need the mano-nasana, where we need to swallow this one. The self should swallow this mind and be the shining self.
Yes, yes. Consider verse 16 of Upadēśa Undiyār. What Bhagavan says in verse 16 of Upadēśa Undiyār, he starts off with an adverbial clause, veli videyangale vittu, leaving external phenomena. Then he says, manam tan oli uru ordale, the mind knowing its own form of light is true knowledge. Why does he say the mind knowing its own form of light? How can the mind know its own form of light? If the mind leaves external things and turns back to face itself, as soon as the mind knows its own form of light, it ceases to be mind and remains as that form of light. But in order to bring about the destruction of mind, it is mind that has to see itself as that form of light. So mind is necessary, but not the outward turned mind. The inward turned mind is necessary. The outward turned mind is an instrument of delusion. The inward turned mind alone will yield true knowledge.
Yeah, it's just the same mind, it's just the same thought. Whether we have a choice of going out or going in,
Yes.
it just need to be turned within all the time. Like, because it every time comes external thought, just use that force to bring in.
Yes.
The more we practice it, it automatically
whatever appears, to whom does it appear?
Yeah. Thank you so much, Michael.
But for that, we require great love.
Practice, love. Yeah.
And the other side, love is one side of a coin. The other side of a coin is vairagya, because the two are one and the same. And to the extent to which we love to know ourselves, we will be indifferent to other things. If we're indifferent to other things, it doesn't matter whether the whole world is Maya. Let it be Maya. It's nothing to do with us.
Yeah.
The problem is caused by Maya because we allow our mind to go out to this Maya.
It's so real and it's so tempting, and it gives like a lot of external pressures.
It seems so real.
Seems so real. Yeah.
Well, so long as we're dreaming, dream seems so real.
Yeah.
But none of it is real. What is
Thank
real is only I am.
Yeah.
As he says in verse 13 of Uḷḷadu Nāṛpadu, Jnanamam tane me. Oneself who is jnana alone is real. Jnana there means awareness, pure awareness.
Yeah.
That alone is real.
I see this is the best teachings, and like everyone tells, simplest, more subtle, more powerful. It seems very complicated, complex when you are practicing in the daily lives in a realistic, in a practical way. But when you see deeper, it seems like very obvious. Oh, it is there in our.
It is not at all complex. It is the simplest of simple things. If you attend to something other than yourself, you've got two things, yourself and the other thing. So as soon as you've got two things, you've got the beginnings of complexity.
Correct.
But when you're attending to yourself, there's only one thing.
Yeah.
There's the I and attending to the I. And even that attention is not other than the I. So there's only one thing. So the state of oneness is the state of perfect simplicity. Yeah. So how to experience non-duality? Attend only to yourself. If you attend to anything else, you're experiencing duality. To experience non-duality, attend only to yourself.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
And then Shalini, I think you said there was a...
Yes. So there is a question which says, it says that Michael told us about the vasanas. How does one's vasanas affect our self-inquiry process? Would our vasanas act as a hindrance to self-inquiry?
Vasanas means inclinations. generally, when we talk about vasanas, we are talking about Vishaya vasanas. That means the inclination to attend to things other than ourselves. So long as we have inclination to attend to other things, when we turn our attention within, we'll be feeling, there'll be a constant inclination to go outwards. So it's affecting us. But the more we practice this self-investigation, turning our attention within, we are weakening the Vishaya vasanas and are strengthening what is sometimes called Satvasana. Satvasana means the inclination just to be, the literal meaning, but that implies to know and to be what we actually are. So we are any vasana that takes us away from ourselves. In other words, all other vasanas other than Satvasana, we can call it bad vasana, but Satvasana alone is the good vasana. That is the vasana we want to cultivate. How do we cultivate it? By persistent practice. By persistent practice, we are increasing the Satvasana and weakening the Vishaya vasanas. So the whole thing is happening at the level of vasanas. That is, do we allow our mind to follow the vasanas and go outwards, or do we follow the Vishaya vasanas and go outwards, or follow the Satvasana and go within? So vasanas are inclinations, but we are not bound by our inclinations. I may have a strong inclination to eat a lot of chocolate, for example, but I know if I eat a lot of chocolate, I'll make myself sick. So though I have a strong inclination to eat chocolate, wisdom prevails and I avoid. No, I won't eat chocolate. So we are not bound. People think that the vasanas bind us. They don't bind us. It is we who have a choice. Do we yield ourselves to these Vishaya vasanas, or do we yield ourselves to Bhagavan by not yielding to the Vishaya vasanas? In other words, yield ourselves to the Satvasana by turning within. So we have that freedom, whether to be swayed by our vasanas or not, is up to us. Yes, when our Vishaya vasanas are strong, we will often succumb to them. We'll often yield ourselves to them. But slowly, by practice, we are weaning our mind off these Vishaya vasanas, the inclinations to go outwards, and we are strengthening the inclination to go within. Olena.
Hello, Michael.
Hello.
Thank you very much for everything, for today's talk. And I would ask you this question. Recently, in one of your videos, I just wanted to clarify it for myself a little bit more, because I will explain. Recently, in one of your videos, you said that actions of our speech, mind, and body can be not only predestined, but also can be a result of our own will.
Yeah.
And to me, I somehow I thought before that actions of our body can be only predestined. I understood for myself it like this, that it can be simultaneously. I mean, everything related to our body is predestined, and it just can be just simultaneously predestined and result of our will. I mean, we also want to have can have desire to do some action. I mean, in this sense, that our body cannot act as a result of our will. It's only can be together with destiny. I mean, like this. I want to tell you that I understood your idea that we should not dwell upon this subject too much. I mean, that what was predestined, what is result of our will. But I just wanted to clarify for myself.
Yeah. Okay. I think many people come to this conclusion, but Bhagavan never said that. But all the actions of the body are destined, and the actions of the mind. Then where does the speech fit in? Are actions of the speech predestined? Are they all predestined, or some of them are according to? So it doesn't work like that. That is, when Bhagavan says in that note to his mother, he said, according to the destiny of each person, he who is for that, being there, being in the heart of each one of them, will make them act. Bhagavan doesn't say there that all actions that are done by the body, speech, and mind are destined. What he says is, according to that is prarabdha, destiny, is the fruit of our past actions that have been selected for us to experience in this lifetime. So it is the fruit are to be experienced. They're about the experience, not about the doing. However, in order to, if it is your destiny to eat a tasty meal today, you cannot eat that tasty meal without assuming there's no one who's going to cook it for you. You have to prepare the ingredients, and you have to cook it, and you have to eat it. So the cooking of that tasty meal and the eating of it, that is according to destiny. However, most of the actions that we do according to destiny are not driven only by destiny. They are also driven by our will, because I want to have a tasty meal today. Therefore, I'm doing it. So it just so happens in that case, you're destined to have a tasty meal, and you want to have a tasty meal. So your will and your destiny happen to be coinciding. This often happens. Many of the actions we do according to destiny are also driven by our will, because we want it. Supposing you want to have a tasty meal today, but it's not your destiny. You can go through all the actions to prepare that tasty meal, but at the last minute, the phone rings and you have to go and answer the phone, and you forget about the food and it all burns. And then you don't have all the ingredients are burnt, you don't have your tasty meal. So that is, we cannot experience anything that we are not destined to experience. And we cannot avoid experiencing what we are destined to experience unless we turn our mind within. That is, so long as we allow our mind go outwards, we have to experience what is destined, and we cannot avoid and we cannot experience anything that we're not destined to experience. But so there are two forces are driving our body, speech, our mind, speech, and body. Because all actions begin with the mind. We begin by thinking, oh yes, I want this. So then that is from the will gives rise to thoughts, and the thoughts give rise to the speech and the actions. So it all begins from the mind. But Bhagavan has not said that all the actions of the body are predestined. That is a misinterpretation. Maybe it's been recorded in some books as if Bhagavan said that, but that isn't what Bhagavan said. Consider the next two sentences that Bhagavan wrote in the note to his mother. He said, what is never to happen will not happen, however much effort you make. That implies he's not talking there just about effort by mind or effort by speech or effort. He's talking about any effort. That is, the effort begins with the mind. I want to experience. I want to avoid this. It is destined to happen. Sorry, that it begins. Bhagavan says, "Oh, sorry." He begins with saying that which is not to happen. So, I want to experience such and such a thing. You can think that. You can make effort for it through speech and body, but it's not going to happen, because it's not. If it's not destined to happen, it's not going to happen. And then in the next sentence, he says, that which is to happen will not stop, however much obstruction one makes. So the implication there is, Bhagavan doesn't say what is not to happen will not happen, what is to happen will happen. He doesn't. That he says it in a more nuanced way. He says, whatever it is good, what is not to happen will not happen, however much effort one makes. What is to happen will not stop, however much obstruction one makes. So we are free to want to to avoid, to experience what is not destined to happen. We're free to try to experience it, but we're not free to experience it. Likewise, we are free to want to avoid what is destined to happen, and we're free to try to avoid it, but we're not free to avoid it.
Okay, thank you very much, Michael. But several things I want to mention in this sense, in the context. First, it was, I think, in Day by Day. Actually, I read about this long ago in David's Be As You Are. I think it was taken from Day by Day with Bhagavan. Yes. It was said someone, some visitor, put his fan or something on the ground and asked Bhagavan whether it was predestined or it just, I mean, it was his will, he just put, and so on. And Bhagavan said that it was predestined. And the conclusion is that everything is predestined. Yes. Sorry, Michael. And the second thing about this, that also, as I understood, or Bhagavan said somewhere that all experiences that we have to go through, they are all predestined. And for example, these efforts that you mentioned to achieve something, even though it cannot be achieved, but all our efforts to achieve it, they are also happening. They are also experience, and which we have to go through. So, I mean, how to understand this, because it's also something that happens in our life.
That is what Bhagavan said. This is a subtle subject. What Bhagavan said was often very nuanced, and those people who recorded often didn't understand the nuances. That is that instant of the fan. I think what Bhagavan was asked is, if I pick up this fan and fan myself, is that predestined? Bhagavan said yes. But what Bhagavan is talking about, that is the experience of experiencing that. If you are destined to experience a cool breeze, you will be made to pick up a fan and fan yourself. Destiny is about experience. In order to experience what is destined, certain actions are necessary. Those actions we are made to do according to destiny. Devaraja Mudliar, who recorded Day by Day, and that is, if you find most of these quotations, there's another book he wrote, that Day by Day he recorded during Bhagavan's lifetime. Nobody could record in Bhagavan's hall, but he would listen to what Bhagavan said. He would remember he would understand it in his own way. What he had understood, he would try and remember it, and he would write it down. So it's not an exact recording of Bhagavan's words. And Bhagavan spoke in Tamil, he recorded in English. The same is the case with talks and any other book. That is, Bhagavan spoke in Tamil, they recorded in English, and nobody recorded there. That is, it was the ashram management had passed a rule: nobody should make notes in the hall. So all these people who recorded, they recorded from memory. So first thing they can only record what they understand, and they can only record what they remember, and they can remember only to the extent that they understand. So if they didn't understand correctly, or if they missed the nuances, they would misrecord it. Devaraja Mudliar had a particular problem with this. He once told Sadhu Om, one thing I could never understand, Bhagavan said everything is predetermined, but he also said that we have Icha Kriya Swatantra, that is the freedom to will and act. I could never understand how these two things can be reconciled. If everything is predestined, how can we have any freedom? So I often ask Bhagavan about this, and whenever Bhagavan explained to me, it seemed clear to me. I thought I had understood. But after some time, I would think about it more, and again, I would become confused. So again, I would ask Bhagavan. So it is this person who couldn't understand this, who couldn't understand the having freedom to will and act is perfectly compatible with everything being predestined. Everything means all that we are to experience is predestined. He couldn't understand the compatibility of these things. So he was often asking Bhagavan, and he was never fully grasping what Bhagavan was saying, because he thought he had understood. And then when he thought about it afterwards, he decided he was again confused. So this is the person who recorded these things. So almost everyone who quotes, but Bhagavan has said everything is predetermined. They're quoting either from Day by Day or from another book by Devaraja Mudliar, My Recollections of Bhagavan. So these are not to be relied on. Devaraja Mudliar is a very good devotee, but he didn't have a very deep understanding of Bhagavan's teaching. Some of the things he's recorded in Day by Day, he's recorded some things very nicely, but this particular subject, he himself had difficulty understanding. It is a subtle subject, because when Bhagavan says whatever is to happen, that means whatever we are to experience, whatever is to happen to us, it doesn't mean whatever is to happen by us. Supposing it were the case that everything was predestined, including our thoughts and our speech and our actions, then where would be the room for doing agamya? That is, Devaraja Mudliar didn't understand the basic law of karma, as explained by Bhagavan. That is, agamya means those actions that we do according to our will. Those are the actions that bear fruit. So whatever agamya we do bears fruit. That fruit we don't experience immediately. It gets stored in what is called sanchita. Sanchita simply means a heap or a pile. So all the fruit of past actions that we haven't yet experienced are called sanchita. And from that sanchita, God then selects those fruit that will be most beneficial for our spiritual development in this life. That is prarabdha. So prarabdha is a selection of the fruit of actions we've done in the past. What actions? Agamya. In other words, actions we've done by our will. So if everything is according to prarabdha, where's the scope for any agamya? So it is a subtle subject. People without subtle understanding jump to conclusions. Bhagavan has said in verse 19 of Uḷḷadu Nāṛpadu, that is, this is back to the old thing. Will and fate, which prevails? This is in philosophy, in the world throughout, this has been a big thing. Whether we have freedom of will or whether everything is predetermined. Yes. Bhagavan says the dispute as to which prevails, fate or will, is only for those who lack. Well, he says there, viti mati moolam vivekam ilake. Those who do not have viveka, that is, who cannot distinguish, who do not know the root of fate and will. What is the root of fate and will? It is only ego. That is, it is we as ego who have a will and therefore act accordingly, and therefore we have to experience the resulting fruit. As he says in verse 38 of Uḷḷadu Nāṛpadu, if we are the doer of actions, we will have to experience the resulting fruit. So we're the doer of actions only if we're acting according to our will. If we're not acting according to our will, we cannot be called the doer of the action. So Bhagavan, according to Bhagavan, so long as we rise as ego, we have a will, and because we have a will, we act accordingly, and therefore we have their fruit to be experienced. That fruit we experience as prarabdha. Prarabdha we cannot change. That is already determined. So prarabdha is predetermined. Our will is not predetermined. At every moment, vasanas are rising and trying to draw us here and there. We are free to choose whether to follow this vasana or that vasana, whether to allow ourselves to be swayed by the Vishaya vasanas or to turn within that is be moved only by the sattvasana, be swayed only by sattvasana, which is the inclination to turn within. So we do have freedom of will. Bhagavan said we have freedom of will. We also have freedom of action. Our freedom of action is limited. Obviously, we cannot do whatever we want. I cannot just fly to the moon or something. I may want to fly to the moon, but I cannot. So obviously there are limitations on what we are free to do. But I'm free to want anything. I can want to go to the extreme end of the universe or the galaxy or whatever. But however much I may want to, I can't do so. So our will is unlimited. Nothing, we can want anything we want. No one can stop it. Our will, that is the term Bhagavan used, is Icha Swatantra. Swatantra is usually translated as freedom, but what it actually means is independence. That is, our will is not dependent on anything else. Nobody can make us want anything or make us not want anything. That is what we want or not want is entirely in our hands. The problem is people say, oh, no, but I don't want this, but still my mind goes after it. That is because we have many different wants. Our vasanas are conflicting with each other. I want to be a good person, but at the same time, I want to be rich, so I want to cheat this person so I can become rich. Then I'll be a good person. Then I'll give some to charity. So we have so many conflicting desires. So our will is only limited internally, not externally. There's no external limitation on our will. Our actions, there are limits on our actions, but within certain limits, we are free to act. So that is called Kriya Swatantra. What we are not free to do is to change what we are destined to experience, either to experience what we are not destined to experience or to avoid experience what we are destined to experience. That we are not free to do. So Bhagavan generally, when he talked about that, in English, the term free will is used, which is a very imprecise word, because generally what people mean when they talk about free will is freedom to do what you want. That is not freedom of will, that is freedom of action. But if we don't have freedom of will, we obviously don't have freedom of action. There's no use in saying, I can do whatever I want, but I can't want but I'm not free to want what I want. So this is a very subtle subject. Bhagavan was very precise about it. In some context, when explaining it, he would distinguish Icha Swatantra from Kriya Swatantra. But generally, he would talk about the two together. He would talk about Icha Kriya Swatantra, the freedom to will or the freedom of will and action. Because what people are concerned about is freedom of action generally. That freedom of action is dependent on freedom of will. That's why Bhagavan generally spoke about them together. Icha Kriya Swatantra. That is the term he generally used. But you won't find this in any English book. They just write free will as a sort of shorthand. But that's a confusing term. It's a very confusing term, free will, because it lacks precision. Are you talking about the will, or you're talking about the freedom of will? In verse 19 of Uḷḷadu Nāṛpadu, it's generally translated as free will, but Bhagavan doesn't mention freedom there at all. He says will or fate. Freedom is implied there, but it's not. Bhagavan actually doesn't talk about freedom there. He says that if he just talks about the dispute about which prevails, will or fate. According to Bhagavan, that is a meaningless dispute because each has its own domain. The agamya we do is entirely determined by the freedom of our will. The prarabdha we experience is entirely determined by fate. So they are two separate domains. The domain of fate is what we are to experience. The domain of will is what we want to experience and what we try to experience. Well, what we want to experience, essentially. Then what we try to experience is accordingly. So this is a very subtle subject, but it's not so complicated. People unnecessarily complicated because they then say, how can I know whether this action is according to will or according to my free will or fate? You cannot know and you need not know. The thing is, The problem lies in our will. Fate we need not worry about, because what is destined to happen is going to happen. We cannot change it. So why should we bother about it? What we need to bother about is our will. Whether we allow ourselves to be swayed by our Vishaya vasanas or turn within. That should be our only concern.
Yes, thank you very much, Michael. I only wanted to also add that this confusion was created also maybe by this Christian approach when Jesus said actually that all our hair are counted. So as if everything actually was predestined, absolutely everything was predestined. That is why we tend to, maybe not everybody, of course, but I mean, for example, I tended to think that everything was predestined, absolutely.
Yeah.
Even for example, to me, even these efforts to achieve something. Which also means that we go through something, through some experiences, through many things when we are trying to get something. It also means that, this experience was something that can be predestined, of course, also. So, I mean, that is why just to me, everything related to actions, to especially body actions, somehow I thought that everything is predestined. But thank you very much. It's very interesting. I will listen again to what you just said, and of course I also understand that it is not the main question that we have to think about. The main question is yes, what to do with our free will.
Another important thing to remember, Bhagavan did teach this law of karma, but he didn't dwell on this much, because that is the reason he taught this is as an aid. If we understand that everything that is to happen is according to destiny, we need not worry about what is destined to happen.
Yes.
The problem is our will. That's why he taught us. We need to understand the purpose of it. But people miss the point that this is supposed to be an aid to help us to turn within. But instead of turning within, people are worrying about, is it which prevails? Is it fate or is it will? They miss the point.
Yes, I think it's we can understand why it happens like this, because we still want to act in this world. We still are attracted to this world. To us, to act is something really very important, because to reach something, we still want to reach something. We still want to do something. Yes, and this confusion is going on because of this.
And this isn't a problem only in Christianity. It is a problem the world throughout. In any philosophy, this is a fundamental thing. To what extent are things predetermined, or to what extent is it according to free will? Even in modern Western philosophy, this problem of free will there's no resolution to it. I mean, some people are determinists. They say everything is strictly determined according to the laws of physics or whatever. Some people say no, there is free will. And then there's what is called, which is an apt description of Bhagavan's teaching, which is, except they understand it in a different way, compatibilism. That is, some philosophers say, yes, there is free will and there is predetermination. The two are not incompatible, they're compatible. That is essentially what Bhagavan has taught. But how they are compatible is not well explained by Western philosophy. It's been very nicely explained since ancient times in Indian philosophy by this very sophisticated law of karma. That is, it is in the form of a law of karma that has been was revealed by sages in the ancient past, and that is the basis of most most Indian systems of philosophy, except the law of karma. There are slightly different interpretations of it, but what Bhagavan taught is the Advaitic interpretation, which talks about these three types of karma: the agamya, the sanchita, and the prarabdha. The actual action is only the agamya. The sanchita and prarabdha are not actions, but the fruit of actions. But sometimes, in order to experience those fruit, we are made to act in a certain way. So by default, it's best to consider all our actions of mind, speech, and body as being according to our will. Then so how do we, if we consider it like that, we then have to take responsibility for all our actions. And the problem lies in our will, therefore we have to turn within. If we turn within, if we truly turn within, we are thereby surrendering our will, and therefore whatever actions we do are according to destiny. Those actions we would do, whether we allow our mind to go outwards or turn it back within, those actions, but we won't be doing any agamya. That is how to avoid doing agamya. The only way is to turn our mind within.
Okay. Thank you very much, Michael. It was very, very useful. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And then Ishwaran and Rama.
Yes, I have a question, Michael.
Yes.
How do we know how much activism in worldly affairs is appropriate, or how do I draw the line? For example, right now there is a serious coronavirus situation in India, and India has appealed to the US to release the material for making the vaccines, and US has refused. Some people have suggested in Facebook that we should pressure the congressman, saying that my family is in India, release the material. Is that kind of political activism appropriate for a Ramana Bhakta like me? What would Bhagavan say? Would this kind of activism create vasanas in me? Will it take me away from my goal of self-realization?
Okay. Bhagavan had a devotee, a very nice devotee called Ramasamy Pillai. He was he was a very good-hearted person. He was always trying to help people. He single-handedly made the path from Ramanashram up to Skandashram. He put all those stones in place. So he was a very hard-working person, and he was back in the 20s and 30s. They used to call him Cycle Swami, because if anything was needed from the town, he would be the first one to hop on his cycle and go to the town and buy it and bring it. So he was very very eager to be of service to Bhagavan and to his devotees. Once he asked Bhagavan, how do I know whether all the actions I'm doing are according to Prarabdha, or how can I be sure what actions I should do? Am I engaging too much in activity? So when I have an inclination to do a certain action, how to know whether I should do that action or not? Then Bhagavan said, whatever inclination you have to act, reject it. Reject it. If you still find yourself driven to do it, but no, Bhagavan didn't even say it like that. He said, whatever you feel inclined to do, reject it. If it still comes and sits on your head, then that is your destiny. In other words, don't take an initiative to do actions of your own accord. But if it is your destiny, somehow or other you'll be impelled to do that. So if it is your destiny, there's no wrong per se in lobbying your congressman. If you think that is a good thing to do, by all means do it. But Bhagavan's advice is avoid it. If you still feel impelled to do it, do it. So we cannot know which actions are according to destiny, which actions are not according to destiny. Those actions that are according to destiny, we cannot avoid doing. So if it is your destiny to lobby those Congress people, and if it is those Congress people destiny to be moved by your lobbying and to bring about a change and to release whatever materials India needs, it will happen, but that's all according to destiny. So that is our aim in Bhagavan's path, our aim is to avoid rising. That is the root of all problems, is our rising as ego. So our aim is to subside more and more and more. But if it is Bhagavan's will that your body, speech, and mind should act in such a way as to bring about a change, he will make them act. So you need not concern yourself. As Bhagavan says in the 13th paragraph of Nāṉ Ār, that is the paragraph on surrender, he says, Sakala Karyangalayam, or Parameshwara Shakti, Nadati Kondirika Padiyal. That means, since one Parameshwara Shakti is driving all karyas. What does he mean by karyas? Karyas means whatever needs to happen or to be done, or whatever ought to happen or be done, those are karyas. So whatever is meant to happen, he is driving it all. So when such is the case, since that is the case, namam adaku adangi iramal, instead of we also yielding to it, Upadēśa Undiyār endru sada chintapadu ain. Why to be perpetually thinking it is necessary to do like this, it is necessary to do like that. So whether you should petition your congressman or not, leave that to Bhagavan. If he wants you to petition them, he will make you petition them. Okay. So leave it all to him. You need not think, oh, should I do this or should I not do it? If it is his will for you to do it, you cannot avoid doing it. If it is not his will for you to do it, even if you try to do it, it's not going to produce any result. So leave it all to him. As he says in the previous sentence of that paragraph, the second sentence, Isun peril evelo bharate patalum avalavayum avabahutu kolkira. That means how, even though one places whatever amount of burden upon God, that entire amount he will bear. So you can leave the entire burden of deciding whether you should petition your congressman or not, leave that burden to Bhagavan. If he wants you to do it, he will prompt you to do it. Even if you try to avoid doing it, if he wants you to do it, you will be driven to do it somehow or other. So our only responsibility is to surrender to him. Let him take care of everything else.
But will this kind of action create vasanas in me?
If it is driven by prarabdha, if you have decided, if you follow the advice that Bhagavan gave to Ramaswami Pillai, reject, 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 and then what comes and sits in your head, that is prarabdha. If you follow that, you're not creating vasanas, or you're not perpetuating the vasanas. The vasanas are there already. You're not generating or you're not strengthening your vasanas. But if you feel, oh, I have to act, and if you act of your own volition, then that will strengthen the vasanas.
Yes, actually, generally what I find is, if I start thinking of something, then it creates more thoughts.
Yes.
So that means that in case I cut it off, or the right in the beginning, that I don't want to do it, then I am actually cutting off the future line of thoughts.
Exactly. That's what Bhagavan says in the 11th paragraph of Nāṉ Ār. He says, as long as Vishaya vasanas exist in the mind, so long is the investigation, who am I, necessary. How long will Vishaya vasanas exist in the mind? So long as there's an ego, it will have Vishaya vasanas. So the implication is, so long as there's ego, it's necessary, this self-investigation is necessary. Then he says in the next sentence, the second sentence of the 11th paragraph, Ninevugal tondra apode kapode avekal ellam utpatistana tileye vicharanayal nasipika vendum. That means as and when thoughts appear, then and there, it is necessary to annihilate them by vicharana in the very place from which they arise. That is, he puts on the Upadēśa, that means the place from which they arise, he puts a double emphasis on that. Upadēśa till means in the place from which they arise. Upadēśa tile is an emphasizing it, but he doubly emphasized it. Upadēśa tileye. So he puts a very strong emphasis on in the very place from which they arise. So before a thought is allowed to expand, before as soon as the Vishaya Vasana rises, as soon as we have an inclination, if we begin to follow that inclination, it will multiply as 1,000 thoughts in no time. But that's why at the very place from which that inclination rises, we need to destroy it. How? By vichara. That means by clinging firmly to self-attentiveness. If we cling to self-attentiveness, we won't be moved by that vasana. We won't be swayed by that vasana. That is destroying it at its very birth, at the place from which it arises.
Thank you, Mike.
Right. All the answers, if you observe, all the answers, they're there in Nāṉ Ār. Everything is answered already by Bhagavan. We just need to be so familiar with these works that we know exactly where to find the answers for ourselves. Then these Zoom satsangs would not be necessary. Zoom meetings would not be necessary. We'll find the answers within ourselves. Because Bhagavan has provided all the answers, but we need to understand, if we understand his teachings clearly, we'll be able to find the answers, because it's all there. It's all there in his own words. And then Ravik.
Hi, Michael. First of all, thank you so much for doing this. I think it's illuminating. My question actually builds on Mr. Ishwaran's question. So you would agree with me that Bhagavan's teaching is as relevant to people like me as it is to young people. And if the young people were to ask that while everything is an illusion, I still need to feed my body, I still need to earn a livelihood. What is the right kind of activity to engage in to earn a livelihood, to feed my body? And this has implication to the practical side that you earlier alluded. So does Bhagavan have any advice on this?
According to Bhagavan, the whole course of our life is already charted out. A young person may not know what, well, none of us know how our life, what shape our life is going to take. So we may start off with a certain idea. I want to be a doctor, I want to be an engineer or something. But our life may take a different course. We don't know. So, but we need not worry about our external life. Whatever is to happen is going to happen. That doesn't, as I said earlier, that doesn't mean all our actions are according to destiny, but whatever is to happen is according to destiny. Whatever we are to experience is according to destiny. And whatever we need to do, whatever the body, speech, and mind need to do in order for us to experience that destiny, they will be made to do. So we really need not concern ourselves with these things. You asked your question with reference to young people. In Bhagavan's path, we are not to give advice that is unasked for. If a young person comes to us and asks, then we can point them to Bhagavan's teachings and point out what Bhagavan says about these things. But we need not tell them of our own accord, because Bhagavan's path is we cannot convert anyone. We cannot. There's no point in preaching Bhagavan's teaching, this is only for those who are inclined. Now the young people, they may be more concerned with their career, with getting married, with all these things. These may be uppermost in their mind now. Later on in life, they may become more interested in these things. Or maybe some people never become interested in these things. Some people are interested in these things from very young. Some people, even children, we find them asking philosophical questions and they're very eager to know these sort of things. So it all depends. We all come to this world with baggage, with the baggage of our previous samskaras or vasanas. So according to that, different people are inclined in different ways. If someone is very enthusiastic to have a career and this and that, at least if we have children, the most we can hope for is that at least they should lead a moral life. They shouldn't try and accumulate wealth in an unrighteous way. So at least if we can instill in them the need to be righteous and to follow certain basic moral principles like ahimsa, not causing harm. So being vegetarian or vegan and generally living a lifestyle that is not causing harm to other creatures. That much we can teach. If they want to know more, if they got a more inquiring mind, then we can begin to tell them more about Bhagavan's teachings. But if they're not interested in these things, this isn't something that we can. This is only. Bhagavan knows who is ready for this, and he will draw them. But by all means, if any young person asks us, it's very good. I mean, it's very nice to see young people who take interest in these things, and we should certainly encourage them and help them. But if they're not interested, we shouldn't try and try and force these ideas on them, because it won't be. There's no use in doing so. Has that adequately answered your question?
Yes, it did. May I ask a follow-up question? You need not answer this because it's a slightly personal question.
No, that's okay.
So, in your life, then how did you try to earn your livelihood with this realization? Again, you have to take care of your body as long as you're alive. So, did you think about any ways in which you have to earn a livelihood?
Yes and no. That is, when I was young, I naturally I thought I was going to have some sort of a career or profession or something. I had an idea when I was young that I'd like to be a doctor because I liked the idea of being of service to people. But actually, I was also of a philosophical bent mind. I was questioning things. So because I didn't focus on my studies hard enough, I was more interested in. I had a restless mind, so I didn't really focus on my studies. So I didn't get into medical college. So then I went to study psychology, and after 6 months of studying psychology, it was very superficial. I found it wasn't satisfying to me, and so anyway, it just somehow I got prompted with the idea to travel to India. I was 19 when I traveled to India, and I was fortunate. In those days, compared to the standard of living in England, India was it was cheap to live in India. And when my grandparents passed away, they left me a little money, so I was able to live in India without really worrying about. I didn't have to earn any money. I had enough to live a very simple life. I thought when I was in Tirunelveli, I thought I was going to spend my whole life there. But Bhagavan had other plans for me. So circumstances happened and I came back to the UK, and I also got married and I had a child, and I had to work for a livelihood for some years. Then I got an opportunity of taking voluntary redundancy and getting some money. I thought I would continue working, but anyway, it's complicated. I mean, life pushes us in so many directions. Since I resigned the job, I haven't actually been earning money at all, but Bhagavan has been providing for me. So it's all the whole life. It's all determined by him. We have certain. Man proposes, God disposes, as they say. We have certain ideas when we start off. We think our life is going to go in a certain way. Even now, who knows? Tomorrow the life may take a complete different turn. I mean, as we get older, it's less likely to take unexpected turns, but who knows? Things can happen at any time. Or maybe the life comes to an end tomorrow. Who knows? It's ultimately, that is, we think we decide all these things, but actually these things, as Bhagavan said, these are all predetermined. What we should do with our life, how we should earn, all these things are absolutely predetermined.
Thank you. Thank you. That's very, very useful. Thank you for sharing your thoughts.
My life is a bit of an unusual life. Most people, young people, don't have the freedom that I had. I mean, I was just lucky I was able to go to India, and Bhagavan provided for me. I lived a very simple life in India, and I was able to live without any difficulty all those years. But then Bhagavan had other plans for me. Whereas I thought I was going to live in Tirunelveli for the whole of my life, Bhagavan had other plans. Who knows why? But so whatever experiences we are to undergo, some experiences seem good, some experiences seem bad, but both the good and the bad are all for our good, because he knows what is best for us.
Thank you.
I think, Michael, is that the end of the questions?
I just see Ishwaran has raised his hand again, so I'll just answer that, and maybe that will be the last one.
Yes, since you said that you lived in India for some time.
Yes.
And I know that you had close association with Sadhu Om.
Yes.
And I have read his books on the self-inquiry.
Yes.
So that I would like to know more about your interaction with Sadhu Om.
Well, I was fortunate. That is, when I traveled to India, I didn't know anything about Bhagavan. I came to know about Bhagavan only while traveling around India. So I've been traveling around India for about 18 months, and I came to Tirunelveli, and I knew very little about Bhagavan before coming to Tirunelveli. I knew he was a sage, but I hadn't actually read any of his teachings. Someone had shown me in Arthur Osborne's biography of Bhagavan about Bhagavan's death experience. So that had kindled my curiosity. So when I came to Tirunelveli, I thought I may stay for just a few days. But when I came, I read the book, small English translation of Who Am I? And I can't pretend that I understood it. And I know now that it wasn't even a very good translation. But it was enough for me. As soon as I read that, I understood, oh, this is what I've been looking for. Because it was so obvious to me. What is the use of knowing everything else until we know what we ourselves are? So it was very clear to me, this is what I've been looking for. So I began wanting to find out how to practice this self-inquiry. So I read some books. So Arthur Osborne says meditate on 2 digits to the right from the center of the chest. That somehow didn't convince me. It didn't seem to me to fit with Bhagavan's teaching. But how actually to practice it, I was very enthusiastic to know. And then some friend, a Malaysian friend of mine, who I had met just there, he told me, he showed me he had, though he was Malaysian, I think he didn't read Tamil much, so he had an English copy of the Path of Sri Ramana, which Sadhu Om he met Sadhu Om, and Sadhu Om had lent him that book. So he said to me, I will ask Sadhu Om if I can pass it on to you afterwards. And then one day he said, I'm going to meet Sadhu Om, would you like to come and meet him? So I went with him to meet Sadhu Om, and then I found that actually I'd met Sadhu Om already. One morning while going around the hill, I'd met him, but I didn't know who he was at the time. So that was after I'd been about 2 weeks in Tirunelveli. So, and soon after meeting him, I read the book, The Path of Sri Ramana, and then I started to come back and asking him questions. So from very, very early on in my stay in Tirunelveli, I was brought into contact with Sadhu Om. And sometimes because I found whenever I talked to him, it was very, very useful, but I was a bit shy to go of my own accord. So I wanted to have questions. If I go there, I want to have questions to ask. Then I heard that he was writing a Tamil commentary on Guruvachar Kovai. And that I knew that there was a translation being serialized in The Mountain Path, a translation by Professor Swaminathan. So I thought, okay, this is a good opportunity. If I read these verses, Professor Swaminathan's translation of Mountain Path, if ever I have any doubt, I can go and ask Sadhu Om. So I started to do that. Whenever I had any question, I would go and ask him. And a few days after I've been asking him about several of the verses of Guruvachar Kovai, he told me, this translation is not so good. Why don't we start making our own translation? So for me, that was a priceless opportunity. So then every day I was going there and we sitting with him, and we would translate a few verses. That is, I didn't know Tamil at that time. I was just beginning to learn, but he would translate. He would usually write on a slate, a rough translation, and I would then question him about it and try and polish it. And as the time went on, we were working together better because I was beginning to understand more Tamil better. And I think the later translations were better. But anyway, over a period of maybe it was a year or two, we translated the whole of Guruvachar Kovai. In the meanwhile, there was an opportunity for me to move into his compound. And so I more or less, I spent the first 8.5 years I was in Tiruvannamalai. I was with Sadhu Om. Then very unexpectedly, he passed away. So that's how I was in contact with him. About how it was being with him, as I often say, that is the depth of my understanding of Bhagavan's teaching. It was certainly I wouldn't have understood Bhagavan's teaching so clearly and deeply if it hadn't been for Sadhu Om. But if I'm asked the greatest benefit I got from being with Sadhu Om, I would say it is a wholehearted, one-pointed love for Bhagavan, because he had such all-consuming love for Bhagavan. His love was infectious, so you couldn't be with him without being infected by his love for Bhagavan. That's one thing. Not only did he have such a love for Bhagavan, he had a very deep and clear understanding of Bhagavan's teaching. So I found, at first the questions I would have been asking would have been more superficial questions, but I found as time went on, the more deeply I questioned him, the deeper the answers. So sometimes, if ever any answer he gave me, I would think about it. And if I wasn't entirely satisfied with it, I would question him. And I would question him relentlessly. And the more I questioned him, the deeper and deeper the explanations he gave me. And sometimes when I'd be there, I would be sitting there and other people would be asking. Visitors would come, or even people who were well known to him would be there, and they would ask him questions about Bhagavan's teachings. Sometimes the answers he gave, they were different to the answers that he had given me. And I would be a bit surprised. So I would ask him afterwards. I'd say, but you explained to me like this. Why do you explain to them like that? He said, I explained to you like, he said, if you remember, previously I had explained to you like this, because you questioned me more, because you asked deeper questions, I had to give deeper answers. When they are ready to question deeper, then I will give them deeper answers. But there's no point in giving deeper answers to those who are not yet ready for it. So then I understood that there are many different levels at which one can understand Bhagavan's teachings. And but to understand Bhagavan's teachings very deeply, we need to think deep. Of course, most important thing is putting them into practice. But our practice is aided by reading his teachings very carefully and thinking about them deeply. If we think about them deeply, the more deeply we question, the deeper the answers will be. Of course, Sadhu Om is not now physically available for us to question, but we can do this questioning within ourselves. That is, when we read Bhagavan's work, we should think very deeply about it. We should understand why Bhagavan is saying like this. What is the connection between what he says here and what he says here? Sometimes certain things Bhagavan says, they don't quite seem to match. Then we understand, oh, that's said at one level, this is said at a deeper level. So we come to understand Bhagavan's teaching. The more deeply we question his teachings, whether within ourselves or outside, the deeper the answers we will get. That is what I learned from Sadhu Om. And when Sadhu Om passed away very, very suddenly, and I felt completely orphaned because I have been relying on him. That I was learning, but the more I questioned him, the more treasures I was getting from him. So I loved to question him and to learn more, to understand Bhagavan's teaching more and more deeply. So when he suddenly passed away, I felt orphaned. I thought, who am I going to ask? How can I ask? He's no longer available for me to ask. And I would think of so many things I would have liked to ask him. But after some time, I understood that Bhagavan had started a process. Once we begin to think deeply about the teachings, we no longer need to look outside for answers. We can find the answers within ourselves, or by thinking about Bhagavan's teachings, that all the answers we're looking for are there in Bhagavan's teaching. We just need to know how to look for them. But as we go deeper in our practice, so we will be able to understand his teachings more and more deeply. So I feel the learning process that started in the company of Sadhu Om, Bhagavan then taught me that learning process has to go on within. We can't always be relying on someone outside to answer all our questions. We've got to find the questions within ourselves with the aid of Bhagavan's teaching. We shouldn't start developing our own theories or anything. We should be carefully guided by Bhagavan's teaching, but we should find the answers within ourselves. And how do we find those answers within ourselves? We need a certain degree of clarity. How do we gain that clarity? By practice. Practice is what is most important. The deeper we go in the practice, the clearer Bhagavan's teachings will become to us.
Yes, actually, there's one more thing I would like to bring up. For a non-native speaker, your command over Tamil is excellent.
Not really. It's not so good, but
yeah, that's true. We are native speakers, and yet we need a lot of explanations.
That is, if you give me some verses of Murugana, I couldn't even, occasionally I can understand them, but many of them I cannot make head or tail. Sadhu Om's verses tend to be easier. I can more easily decipher Sadhu Om's verses because he tends to write in a simple, but even many of Sadhu Om's verses I'm not able to, because even to do with Padachaitam, I'm not able to do. But Bhagavan's works, because I'm so familiar with them, because I translated them all with that, I assisted Sadhu Om in translating them, and since then I've been refining my translation. So I'm so familiar with Bhagavan's works. It looks like I'm a master of Tamil when I'm not really. It's like it's like a small child. When a small child learns to read, they maybe have a little book and they learn to read. They may not actually be reading, but because it's such a simple book, they know the book by heart. Yeah. So they can look like they're reading it, whereas actually it's because they're repeating it from memory. So I'm a bit like that small child because I know Bhagavan's teaching so thoroughly. It looks like I'm an expert in Tamil, whereas I'm not at all.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We really enjoyed being part of this satsang. Thank you for taking the time.
I'm shy of using this word satsang. In one of my earlier answers, I said these Zoom satsangs, but it's not a term I usually use because the term satsang is has been very, it's been trivialized nowadays. Any group of good people who get together to talk about spiritual things, that's a satsang. That is a very superficial form of satsang. Bhagavan explained what real satsang is. Satsang means association with Sat. What is Sat? It is only I am. So the purest form of satsang is turning our attention within. the next best form of satsang is dwelling upon the words of the Guru, because the Guru's words are constantly pointing us back within. So only in that sense, because we're talking about Bhagavan's teachings, not my words, but what Bhagavan has said is important, though dwelling on talking about his words, that is satsanga. But that is a secondary form of satsanga. That is turning within is the real Atma Sangha. This dwelling upon Bhagavan's teaching, thinking deeply about Bhagavan's teachings, that is satsanga at the mental level. Grosser than that is at the physical level, going and being in the presence of Bhagavan, going around Arunachala or going around Bhagavan's Samadhi. That is a physical level of satsanga. But and of course, the subtler, the best satsanga of all is turning within and attending to ourselves. Next best is dwelling upon Bhagavan's teachings, which are always pointing us back within. So if these meetings we have, if these are useful, they're useful only to the extent that we're focusing on Bhagavan's teachings, which is why I'm constantly quoting. You've noticed I very seldom quote from talks or day, but sometimes I refer to talks or day by day or Maharshi's gospel, because there are some nice things there. But generally, I'm focusing on Bhagavan's own original writings, because these are what we can be absolutely sure of, because Bhagavan himself has written that.
Thank you so much.
So if at all this is satsanga, it's satsanga only because of the involvement of Bhagavan's words.
That's true.
Michael, did you want to take one more question, or should we leave it for next time? Because it's been going on for about 4 hours.
Okay, one more. Let's see. Okay, Michael, you've got your hand raised.
Hi, Michael.
Hi.
Is there something you just said triggered a question? You said we come with so much baggage, and my understanding was now at the moment, you can correct me, that we are the self, I am the self, I'm unborn awareness. And so like, as far as I understand it, then I shouldn't identify with this body mind that's come.
Yes.
It's not me. It's just seemingly happening, isn't it? So maybe it's just the way you said it.
Okay. What you actually are is pure awareness, which is immutable, infinite, being immutable, it's unchanging. But you now are aware of yourself as I am Michael. We both have make the same mistake. We're both aware of ourselves as I am Michael. That is, you identify yourself with a body and mind that are called Michael. You take yourself to be a person. What is aware of itself as I am Michael is not your real nature. It's not Brahman that is now mistaking itself to be I am Michael. It is what is called ego. Ego is neither the body, but it now takes itself to be, nor is it Satchit. It is something that has risen in between, as Bhagavan says in verse 24 of Uḷḷadu Nāṛpadu, which I referred to earlier. It's neither this nor that, but it borrows the properties of both. That's why Bhagavan calls it a formless phantom. It has no form of its own. It's got no substance of its own. So it borrows its substance from Satchit. What is the substance? I am. That is that awareness of our own existence. That is the substance that it borrows from Satchit. But it's not aware of itself just as I am. It borrows the form of the body. I am the form of this body. So I am Michael. So it is that false awareness, ego, which is what takes birth again and again. And what is the baggage it brings with it? It's vasanas. People often talk about karma being baggage. Yes, in a sense it is, but we don't have to worry about karma, because the karma that we to experience, the fruit of the past karma, is selected by God for our own good. So however bad our prarabdha may seem to be, it's actually for our good. So we need not worry about that. The problem is well, ego itself is a root problem, and the secondary problem is its vasanas. Because the vasanas of the inclination of our self as ego to attend to things other than ourselves, that is what drives us outwards and makes us reluctant to turn within and surrender ourselves. So the problem we have to deal with is the vasanas, and the root of the vasanas is ego. The means to deal with the vasanas and the means to deal with the ego, very happily, they happen to be the same means. That is, if we are turning within, we are thereby weakening the vasanas and bringing about the subsidence of ego. So this same medicine that Bhagavan has given us, the medicine for ego, is also the medicine for the Vishaya vasanas. And if this medicine will weaken our Vishaya vasanas and eventually bring about the dissolution of ego. So that is all we need know. Turn within. That's what however much we talk all these things, but the conclusion, whatever we talk about, the conclusion should be, so what do we have to do? Turn within. Turn within means turn back to face ourselves alone. Does that adequately answer your question?
So what you're saying is, like, as long as someone identifies with this one who's being reborn,
so long as there is an I that identifies itself as I am this or I am that, now it takes itself to be Michael. When Michael is a body which will wear out with time. And one day this Michael will come to an end. That will be the ending of this dream. But the dreamer remains. The dreamer is ego. Brahman is not dreaming anything. Brahman just remains as it is. Satchit, it doesn't dream anything. Satchit is just as it is. It is this false entity called this rising I, this ego, but is what is identifying itself. That is the dreamer. So long as the dreamer survives, a dream may come to an end, but it'll dream another dream. And in every dream, it projects another body. So what we call many lives are just many dreams.
Okay. So, sorry, I'm questioning you deeply now, like you did with the other one I want to.
Okay.
You know, like, yeah, this arising or something in between, like you said, that is not on me. I'm the self, and this is just a projection or something.
Well, when you say it's not me, the one who is saying it's not me is the ego. So we need to, that is, the problem with ego is its nature to attach itself to forms. As Bhagavan says, grasping form, it comes into existence. Grasping form, it stands. Grasping and feeding on forms, it flourishes. Leaving one form, it grasps another form. So form grasping is the very nature of ego. But he then says, Tedinal autem pidicum. It's sought, it takes flight. That means if it tries to grasp itself, instead of grasping other things, if it tries to grasp itself, if it tries to attend to itself to see who am I, Tedinal autem pidicum. It takes flight. In other words, it subsides and dissolves back into its source. So what now the I or the me we're talking about now is ego. That is, there's only one I, but now it's that I mixed with adjuncts as I am Michael. So that which is aware of itself as I am Michael, that now needs to turn within to investigate who am I. It needs to try to hold on only to itself. Forget about Michael, forget about everything else. Who am I? Yeah. We need to separate ourselves from these adjuncts, which we can do only by clinging to I am.
Sorry,
and the more we cling to I am, the more we bring about the subsidence of ego, and eventually we'll bring about its dissolution, permanent dissolution.
Okay, so I think is this what you're saying then, that as long as you're identified as the person, you will be reborn. But
not the person will be reborn. The I that is identifying itself with a person, it will again, that is, in other words, the I that is dreaming. The I that is dreaming, I am this person. When the end of life of this person comes to an end, it will dream I am some other person.
and the I is
That's what you need to investigate. If you investigate that I, you will then find that that I is not a dreamer, it is just pure awareness. But it will remain a dreamer until it experiences itself with pure awareness. As soon as it experiences itself with pure awareness, it ceases to be the dreamer and it remains as pure awareness.
Okay, it's the dreamer that's reborn.
It's the dreamer that's reborn. In other words, the dreamer dreams another dream. But the dreamer always takes itself to be a person in its dream. That is why it's called rebirth.
But that is not the pure self.
It's not the pure. No, it's not pure self.
It's like so what's the name for it in
ego? Ego is a simple name. Ego, jiva.
So basically, you are the ego
in various ways. Mind.
So basically, are you saying that you are the ego until you fully realize the self and end of samsara? That's it.
You seem to be ego. You are not ego. You are always that. You're always Satchit. But so long as you rise as ego, you seem to be something other than Satchit.
Okay, so should I just stick with what I originally thought, that my thinking is that I am the self, and this is just
I am the self is. What do you mean when you say I am the self? I am myself. Thinking that isn't the problem.
No.
Who is thinking? Who is the thinker?
Yeah.
All these teachings, they are things that we have learned. When you were a small baby, did you know any of these teachings? No. Over the course of your life, you've learned these teachings. So merely repeating the teachings like a parrot, I am Brahman, or I am the self, that doesn't solve any problem.
Yeah, I understand.
We need to investigate what is this I? Who am I?
What I'm saying is like seeing that I am this unborn self on whatever level. And
don't have any preconception. These are all ideas. These ideas are pointing us back towards ourselves. They're drawing our attention back to ourselves. Merely dwelling on the ideas we can learn all of Bhagavan's teachings by heart, but that doesn't solve our problem. That is why learning Bhagavan's teachings is very useful. It's useful because it prompts us to put it into action. But if we don't put it into practice, if we don't put it into practice, then we're missing the point. So practice is Bhagavan's teachings are all about practice. They're all pointing our attention back towards ourselves. Who is this I? Who is this I who is now aware of itself as I am Michael? If we investigate that I, it will subside and merge back into its source, which is what you actually are, the pure Satchit, the fundamental awareness I am.
Yeah, I understand that. I was just trying to. Sorry, it's going on long, but I don't know. I'm trying to, picture what is reborn and
don't picture it. Investigate it.
Yeah.
Investigate who am I, and then you will find you were never born.
But ultimately, you want us to hold on to that you are the unborn and investigate it and
just
so on.
Hold on to I without any preconceptions. Bhagavan says, thinking I am not this body, I am that Brahman, that is due to weakness of mind. When you're said you are that, you should then say, oh, if I am that, then what am I? We should investigate what am I. That is what's important. Bhagavan never recommended thinking I am Brahman or I am the self or I am pure consciousness. What am I?
Yeah, be
Could
that.
I suggest that we call it a day because it's been really long and we're not going to become enlightened in a moment.
No. So long as we continue talking, we're not going to become enlightened. We need to turn within to become enlightened.
Yeah. I know what you're saying.
That if the teachings are useful, but we need to understand the teachings are all pointing to us. They're pointing to us to turn back within. So we need to follow these pointers. We need to put it into practice.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we can continue talking about these things for all eternity. The problem isn't solved until we understand that Bhagavan is pointing our attention back at ourselves. That is the whole point.
I think, Michael,
Thanks, Michael.
It's been a long session for you, and I think we all have to control ourselves in asking questions.
Yes. We have to curb the inclination to go outwards, curb the Vishaya vasanas, and merge back within.
So Michael, thank you very much for your immense patience and energy
all thanks. If I have any patience or energy, it's all given by Bhagavan.